G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. It is the trade deadline show. Lots to get through. Today we're talking all your ads, your watch lists, and your drops. Let's get into it. Let's go.
Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Bryant to Shaq.
Not a game. We talking about practice.
LeBron James with no regard for human life. Anything's possible.
Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Curry for three. Wow! Unbelievable. Making it rain in New York. We the North are now we the champions.
Not the destination, it's the journey. Mamba out.
G'day and welcome back to the Ball Boys Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at BallBoysNBA and on Instagram at BallBoysFantasyBasketball. And I'm joined, as always, with Callum Mack, the fantasy guru. How are you, mate?
Yeah, doing well. It's been an exciting few days with the trade deadline.
Yes.
Finally over now. So what's happened?
Yeah, so obviously we haven't recorded since the last couple of trades have gone down. We intentionally sort of delayed the recording of this podcast until this afternoon, on a Friday afternoon here in Brizzy, to talk about a lot of trades. So lots to get through. Before we get into the fantasy implications and all the ads and drops that we're going to have, which we'll talk about today, what is your general takeaway of the trade deadline? Any sort of major teams that were winners and losers, or who do you think did well? Who do you think did shit?
I think it's got to start with the big blockbuster trade, right? Like
Yeah,
the Ben Simmons, James Harden, that blew me out.
Did you see it coming? Did you think it was going to happen?
There was a lot of talk surrounding it, obviously, previously. I didn't think it was actually going to happen, but here we are.
I didn't think it was going to happen until about maybe a couple of days ago when there was this report where I think someone, I can't remember which, was it Brian Windhurst or something like that, was saying that everything is a tactic and there's all this sort of stuff. And then James Harden kept getting ruled out of all these games, and it was just okay, there's a lot of smoke here. Look, I'm just glad that it's done, and Ben Simmons, we can see him play again, and we can stop hearing about all this nonsense, and we can finally put to bed the big three era in Brooklyn. Probably the biggest letdown big three of all time, you could say.
I would definitely say that. They only played something like 18 games together. And
crazy.
what they did, they won games, man. They did win games. It was a huge letdown. They were 5-1 in the playoffs with that lineup. And obviously the injuries occurred to Kyrie, and they didn't get to play many games after, just a pretty short half season, really. And
if you were to tell me that this was the trade that was going to happen at the start of the season, I would have laughed in your face. I was just no way that's going to happen. But got to give credit to Philadelphia. I was skeptical that they were going to get anything more of value the more they waited, but they did. James Harden's a big piece. Obviously, they gave up a little bit more, and maybe their future is not necessarily that intact. They've got older pieces now, but obviously they're a legit contender this year and probably next year as well. So they're hoping to win a championship in the next couple of years. I'll give a shout out to the Indiana Pacers. I think that they've done really well jump-starting their rebuild, getting good value for Sabonis. Of course, I think it's come at the expense of the Sacramento Kings. Sounds like a layup, but really, man, what are you doing, Sacramento? I feel like this team just always puts their worst foot forward and is just constantly on this bubble of trying to be good enough to make the playoffs but not quite getting there. Look, sure, you might make the play-in tournament this year, but, Tyrese Halliburton was your most valuable asset, and you've just cashed it in year two, and I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, man, but anyway, well, what are your thoughts on any of those trades or any of the other trades outside of the big one?
Look, I want to come to Sacramento's defense a little bit, just because I think the media has been very harsh. Everyone's totally trashing them. Sabonis is a great player. He's a two-time All-Star, 25 years old. I think everyone's just kind of ignoring that this man could also get better. Tyrese Halliburton had a really good season. He was playing incredibly well with De'Aaron Fox when he was out, specifically. But I just think maybe they just weren't a good match together. And if you were going to make that same trade, say 2 years ago with De'Aaron Fox, everyone would have been just as shocked in the pool because he had incredible kind of sparks as well from a even the first and second year. And obviously it's been a bit downhill now, but maybe Sabonis unlocks him a bit. Maybe they get some chemistry. I think with two young assets like Fox and Sabonis, they could build something around them in the next 3-4 years, assuming that those players obviously do get better. So let's let this, I feel like everyone's hating on Sacramento a bit. Yeah, look, Halliburton, he said he bought into Sacramento. Yes, I understand that. But the man only put up like 15 points and he could run a court. I'll say that he was a floor general. There's not many of those left in the league, which is, I guess, one of the positive aspects. His percentages were great. But Sabonis is a beast. He's a 2-time All-Star, 25 years old.
Yeah, I'm not arguing. I think Sabonis is a great player. I think he's a good, smart, he plays the correct way. He's a good passer. He's obviously can score and rebound really well. He lacks a bit on defense, and he also can't shoot the ball very well either. So I just think that if that's the way they're going, at best case scenario, this team is like a 6th seed. And if that's what Sacramento's after, I know they've had a long playoff drought, then sure, end that drought and try and do that. And even that, though, is questionable. This year, they're not going to make the playoffs this year in terms of getting straight in. They'll get to the play-in tournament, and then maybe they'll have a chance. But there's, the freaking Lakers are in there right now, and I don't think that they're going to beat the Lakers. I don't know. I have no problems with Sabonis being an upgrade this year from Tyrese. I just don't like the fit. I don't like the direction. In my opinion, there's been several years where they should have tried to get worse to get better in the future, get a better draft pick, but they're always picking 9, 10, 11. And then when they have that pick, they pick Davion Mitchell, and then they create this issue for themselves, and they have this logjam of guards, and so then they have to get themselves out of that issue by trading one of the guards to balance their roster, when in the first place you could have just, I don't know. Anyway, it's just we don't want to talk too long about our opinions on what the general manager should have done, but we want to let you guys know as fantasy general managers what you should be doing after the drama that was the trade deadline. So today we're talking ads, watches, and drops. So players that you can go ahead right now, either add them onto your roster or drop them off your team, or make sure you just keep an eye on them over the next couple of days and the next couple of games and see how they're going. So I'll throw it over to you, Cal. I'll give you the layup. Obviously, there's a guard over in Philly that if he's available, you 100% should be picking him up. This is, let us know who it is.
This has got to be Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it has to be Ben Simmons.
He should be playing again. They're saying that he could be ramping up pretty quickly. He was already working out prior to the deadline. His mental health is suddenly better. Is that what we're hearing? He's just turned a corner straight away. Quite convenient, really. So I would expect him to be out there pretty shortly. Obviously, he's a punt free throw kind of guy.
Yeah.
I would expect him to get some pretty good assists. Obviously, Kevin Durant is still out. So maybe his points when he comes straight into it will be pretty reasonable. He's a great fit with Kyrie Irving.
I think it's a great fit for him, personally. I think in terms of compared to
and
Philly.
Seth Curry comes over too. He needs the shooters around him.
Yeah, he's got Patty Mills, he's got Seth Curry there. Obviously, Kyrie Irving's there every second game or whatever it is. Kevin Durant's one of the best floor spacers in the league. He might play a bit of power forward with a couple of those guards in the lineup. So I think that, obviously, his floor is what he was last year, but I think he's probably actually going to improve once he gets his legs underneath him. So in terms of maybe dynasty people that have him on their roster, I think it's an upside play from here. You're going to get potentially more points, potentially more rebounds because you don't have an Embiid on your team. There's no real true center on this roster. So I think you can see an uptick in both of those stats. And obviously his field goal percentage is a big carry as well. So when the shots go up, potentially, that is going to be a bigger positive for you as well. So exciting to see Simmons back on the court playing NBA. Obviously, he's rostered at 90% of leagues, so really easy one, but just want to take a mention that for whatever reason, if he's still on the waiver wire, make sure that you go correct that. And I can definitely see him being a top 50 player, basically, once he gets back, and higher than that if you're in a punt free throw percentage build.
Yep, I agree. I'd expect his kind of points per game be about 15, and then your classic 7 rebounds, 7 assists, just like what he's done throughout the majority of his career.
Yeah, nearly 2 steals, over 50% field goal. So, I think he's going to be pretty reliable there. Let's go on to some more of the less obvious ones. I want to talk about the guy who I think is the biggest winner individually from the trade deadline in terms of player that might be available on your waiver wire. And I think it's Devin Vassell. I think he is the clearest There's nothing rotation-wise that has to sort of work itself out. I think it's just locked and load. Devin Vassell, I think, is the biggest winner of the trade deadline, and he would be, of all of these players, the biggest priority for me to add. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with me on that with a few of these names we're going to go through? Do you think there's someone else, or what are your thoughts on Devin Vassell as an ad?
Is that purely just based off the fact that Derek White is out of there?
So Derek White is out of there. It looks like they're clearly trying to get worse and play for ping pong balls. Devin Vassell is already putting up good stats in limited minutes. He's improving as the season goes along. I just think that, he's going to get closer to 30 minutes a game and feature more heavily on the offense, really. It's going to be him and DeJounte Murray in the backcourt, I think, unless Josh Primo suddenly comes out of nowhere and surprises us all again. But I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, I think Primo's a few years away. But, I think that's a good shout out. Vassell, he definitely, his current position is 112, and that's been about 25 minutes. He was one of the main kind of go-to scorers off that bench for San Antonio. But then the plug into the starting lineup, you'd expect him to go up to the 30-minute mark, have some plays run through him. So he's pretty reasonable in steals. He actually gets pretty good blocks for a guard as well at 0.6 and super low turnovers. So if you can maintain those kind of efficiencies while getting a bit more points, threes, I think it is a good shout out. He should be added at this point. His percentage, he is only 34% rostered currently. Yeah,
which is surprisingly low because, like you said, he's already been doing really well this season. He's already, a top 120 player, which is someone who theoretically should be a must-roster player as it is. So I think that absolutely he would be my number one grab following the deadline. And I think there's just because a lot of these other guys we're going to go through, you'll notice that a lot of them are front court players. There's a lot of big guys available, and a lot of the rotations are yet to be clear. So keep this in mind. There's a lot of stuff still to play out. We're having our best guess, and I would add some of these guys straight away and just wait and see. But some of these might not work out. So just keep that in mind. I wouldn't be dropping anyone of serious value for a lot of these guys. I think Vassell, however, is probably the clearest. I don't really see a world where his minutes don't increase and his usage doesn't increase as well. Whereas some of these other guys, it might flame out. We might miss. All right, who's our next guy for the ad there, Cal?
So we got big Andre Drummond, the Giant.
Yes.
I think it's he obviously, I would say he slots into the starting lineup.
Yeah.
I dare say I don't know how many minutes he has, but I think LaMarcus Aldridge is still out. Blake's been a bit of a shell of himself this season.
Claxton's still out.
Yeah, and Claxton, he's out as well, isn't he? So
yeah.
I think he's just going to slide straight into the starting lineup. When Claxton comes back, there could be some question marks, but for now, when he gets minutes, this man always puts up numbers, always has rebounds. He can get steals at the big spot, can get the block a game as well. He's a great fantasy player when you're punting the free throws. You have to keep that in mind, obviously, but I'd be going to pick him up because even if a punt free throw guy misses, you could make that trade potentially as a bit of a trade asset too. So he should be picked up regardless. Yeah,
I think so. And I think obviously his usage is not going to be very high in Brooklyn, although they are missing a few guys right now. But there's just Claxton can't stay healthy. Aldridge is old and has trouble staying healthy. Griffin is probably not a center really on this team. So like we said, there might be question marks, but on the off chance that he grabs his starting role and runs with it, we know that he can be a top. In a punt free throw percentage guy, this guy's a top 30 player when he's getting 25 minutes a night because he just gobbles up the rebounds, get those steals. The assists are actually pretty solid as well. He gets a block. The free throws obviously hurt, but he doesn't take that many anymore. Obviously, in a limited role in 18 minutes, it's under 2 a game. It still does hurt a little bit, but you can maybe do with it if you're really strong in that category. But like you said, if he grabs that role, you're going to have a great trade chip on your hands before your fantasy trade deadline. So a little bit murkier, but I think you've got to grab him and just sort of wait and see how it all shakes out. And until those guys are back, you've got an excellent streamer on your hand at bare minimum. Let's talk about Alperen Şengün. Not really necessarily someone who benefits from the trade deadline, really, but I just want to make sure that he's in here as an ad. He obviously stunk it up today, scoring 0 points on 0 of 3 shooting. Move back to the bench.
And 0 of 2 from the free throw line.
Yeah. Move back to the bench as well. I'm expecting Eric Gordon. He didn't get traded today, which, obviously they were trying to get him traded. I'm expecting him to get bought out or have all these phantom injuries and potentially get shut down for the rest of the season. And he's going to come back in and be the power forward, play a lot of time next to Wood, and especially post All-Star break, I'm expecting him to continue improving. So I am still holding him, and I think that he is someone who probably has nearly just as high as upside as anyone else on this list outside of Ben Simmons. So I think that he is definitely someone that, whilst he had a terrible game today, I would still be adding him if he is available.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that Daniel Tice was sent out, even though he wasn't really playing many minutes, he was in and out of the lineup. And the addition that they made was Dennis Schroeder, and that shouldn't impact someone like a Şengün.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think Schroeder really is going to play for this team. I think he's probably going to get bought out as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about those kinds of players. And look, say there ever is an injury to Christian Wood or anything like that. Now there's literally no one else outside of Şengün to get those minutes. So there is a lot of upside if something else was to happen and Tice is no longer a plug-and-play kind of piece. So a little bit of upside there. I want to touch on Josh Hart. Even though he is rostered in 73% of Yahoo leagues, or 72% I should say, he is someone I think there's going to be a big beneficiary. Now, Blazers have cleared the shop. They've traded 3 of their starters, and they are clearly playing for ping pong balls right now. And I think Josh Hart is someone who's going from a role in New Orleans where he wasn't really the featured guy. I don't expect his minutes to change, but I think the usage is going to be a bit more there. There's less offensive pieces around him now. So I think that he is someone who is already the 92nd ranked player, but I think he can definitely crack that top sort of 75 moving forward. So I think he should be a lot higher than 72%. So if he is available in your league, I would definitely add him.
Yeah, I agree. Even the stats for the season thus far have been quite impressive. Over 50% from the field, a 3-pointer, 13 points, 8 rebounds. We know he can rebound for a guard.
We do know that.
4 assists and over a steal a game. So there's definitely a lot of net positive there.
Yeah. I was surprised when I saw that he was like that lowly owned. I was like, man, like this guy should be like 85% plus. Like why are we not having him on our roster? And it's just going to be even more so locked in now. So just make sure that he is rostered in your league. Just to clear that one up. Talk to me about Davion Mitchell, Cal. Do you think that he is someone that you're scrambling to go and add, or are you not so sure about this one?
I give it if you believe in him, you could give him a hesitant add. I like Davion. I think he will just be a hot and cold player. That's what he's been like for most of the season. But over the past few weeks, he's been getting a lot of minutes.
He's been doing really well, yeah.
And he's had a few pretty bright sparks there. He hits a lot of threes for you. He'll get you assists. And it gets you that kind of consistent steal a game too. Yeah. So there's a lot there. I'm a big fan. I think this trade, obviously, of Halliburton really pushes him to more minutes. He's been 26 minutes for the season. Over the past couple of weeks, that's over 30 minutes a game. So he's definitely, to some degree, obviously stepped up. And then with the Halliburton news, you would expect, 34 minutes over the past couple of weeks. That's a lot of minutes. So, you know what? Let's go snatch him. 17 points, 5 assists. I take him and see where it takes you.
I think he's a must roster. I think you have to go and add him, especially if you do need those sort of classic guard stats, the assists, the steals, some decent threes as well. He's shooting a lot better than I sort of thought that he would be at this stage in his career. So credit to him. He's doing a bit better than I thought he would, especially this early on. Although we did highlight the fact that he is an old man, so he should be ready to contribute. But I am worried a bit about like Dante DiVincenzo coming back in the trade today. Even when before that trade they made and they traded Tyrese Halliburton, he came off the bench. He did still play 34 minutes. You're right, but I'm just he's a must roster right now. But I wouldn't expect that what he's been doing the last couple of weeks to continue. I would sort of keep he wouldn't be someone who I think that if he has a cold stretch of games that I'm holding regardless. I'd be happy to move on with him if that was the scenario. But for right now, with what we've seen of the last couple of weeks with the trade with Tyrese Halliburton, how he's looking on the court, I definitely do think he's a must-roster player. So add him now, and then hopefully it continues. But I'm hedging my bets, and I don't know if it will. Would you agree with that assessment in terms of the Dante DiVincenzo, and I think there's even a couple of other guys coming over from Detroit and Josh Jackson and things like that. Just a couple other annoying pieces that might get in his way.
Yeah, I think DiVincenzo is the key, and I would kind of add him to a bit of a watch list. These guys will battle it out for, I guess, that 2-guard position.
Yeah, even like Justin Holiday and Jeremy Lamb, who came over from the Indiana. Yeah. There actually are a lot of players on this team now that are all kind of like this similar kind of level, and it's just about figuring out how the Kings are going to play it and who they're going to prioritize. I think it will be Mitchell, but whether it's 34 minutes a night or whether it's 27, 28 minutes a night, which might be the difference between whether he's worthwhile holding and maybe he's like better off being a streamable position. But we'll see. Right now, I would definitely add him. Let's go on to the next guy here who got a big extension today, and with no Kristaps Porzingis in the lineup, give me your thoughts on Dorian Finney-Smith, Cal.
Look, he's always gotten a lot of minutes. So I guess the case is that he's now going to step up and have a bit more of a role in the offense.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the case?
I think it is the case. I think, look, to me, he's someone who I think should be rostered anyway, but he's only rostered in 37% of leagues. He is someone who contributes across the board in like Nicholas Batum or maybe even like a Robert Covington light kind of situation, where he gives you the steals, he gives you the low turnovers, the threes, half a block a game. Percentages aren't as good, but I think that he is someone who, with just a little bit more usage and scoring and perhaps another few rebounds here and there, because they seem reluctant to play Kleber and what's the other guy's name? Dwight Powell, like huge minutes. Sometimes they're going to go small. I think that does help Dorian Finney-Smith just a little bit. And I think he was already someone who I would have on my roster anyway. So I think just going from that 128th ranked player to maybe he's closer to the top 100 now, in my opinion.
Okay, so you're expecting a bit of an increased role and then increased rebounds as well for a bit of small ball.
Yeah, just a little bit of a jump, and he was already someone who was like basically should have been on rosters, to be honest. So I think that puts him in an ad for those.
And there are shots to go around. You look at the averages. Kristaps put up 15 shots a game, and that's going to have to be somewhat leveled out. You do have Spencer Dinwiddie, who probably will come into that starting lineup, which is a player they ended up receiving, and he averages about 11 shots a game. So we'll see how they play it out. Obviously, it's a new roster.
Yeah, I don't think Dinwiddie's going to like continue just to do the role that he was doing over at Washington. So I'd imagine those 11 shots come down, and it's a bit more evenly distributed. So maybe he just gets a couple of more shots a game, a couple of more rebounds a game. But to me, that's enough for him to sort of just move up 20 spots at the back sort of end of the roster and get close to that top 100, which to me is valuable. That's a must roster player, really, especially with all the other stuff that he does. Talk to me about, let's talk Indiana Pacers. There's a couple of guys that we had as some stashes. Isaiah Jackson, Goga Bitadze. Now, Domantas Sabonis did get traded, so that was a huge piece for those guys. However, Miles Turner did not. And they also added a guy in Jalen Smith from the Suns as well. What the hell is going on with this Indiana Pacers rotation? I've got these two here in ads because their per minute upside is high enough that if they are the ones that get it, the reward is high. You know, Isaiah Jackson could be a top 75 player if he's playing 28 minutes a night. Goga Bitadze could be a top 80 player if he's playing 30 minutes a night. This is a possibility. However, it's a bit murky and it might not happen. So what are your thoughts? Let's just talk Indiana in general, and what do you think happens in that front court from here on out?
I was always a bit higher on Isaiah Jackson, and I think he probably fits the lineup next to Miles Turner better. Now we know Miles Turner is going to be the center for the remainder of the season. Goga Bitadze, I think that he's more the center. Isaiah Jackson can play the four. He can be kind of that aggressive guy, get some rebounds. And you don't really need him to spread the court because Miles Turner can. It's one of the positives of him. So I'm probably more on that fence. And then with the whole Jalen Smith thing, I'd probably keep an eye on him. He could end up stealing minutes if they go for the full tank mode, which is obviously on the cards. Yeah. But then again, both those guys are also kind of going to get minutes if they're tanking. So it's really kind of up to the coach at this point. And I'm probably the highest on Isaiah Jackson of the three.
I am too. I think he is the priority of the two. I think you say he can play power forward next to Miles Turner. He can, but they haven't done that yet. Like, he hasn't really played much power forward. He's been used pretty exclusively as like a center. Now that might change. Like, they might be getting directions from the front office saying, look, play Isaiah Jackson because we want to be bad. We want to see what he can do in this position and just try it out. That's definitely a possibility. So I think regardless, he's got the highest upside. Outside of, maybe Şengün on this list, even probably higher than Şengün if they both get even minutes, but he's also got, he might be not rosterable. So big range of outcomes for Isaiah Jackson. So I just think that if there's nothing better, if you believe in him, then he's worth a flyer. And I think that his upside, if you do hit, it is a big swing in terms of improving your fantasy team, especially if you do need those blocks, the field goal percentage, the rebounds, and all those big man stats that he will bring. Similar story with our last ad here on Daniel Gafford over in Washington. Now, I was tweeting in caps lock, go add Daniel Gafford when Montrezl Harrell was traded. But about 2 minutes after I tweeted that, we get this crazy announcement that Kristaps Porzingis is traded to the Washington Wizards. And I was like, I don't know about you, but I saw this trade in live. I was walking to work at the time, and I literally was like, what the fuck? Like, where did this come from? This seemed so random at the time. We heard no news of this at all. And the trade coming back, Spencer Dinwiddie and who was the other piece? Davis Bertans? Like,
yeah, that's right. The Phil salary, and who I think will both be able to play with Luka.
Oh, but what are you doing, Dallas? Yeah. Like, surely you get more than this for us. And they gave them a pick. They gave them a second round pick, and it floored me. But anyway, what are we doing with Daniel Gafford from a fantasy point of view, Cal?
I'll say, look, the New York Knicks fans did win the Kristaps Porzingis trade.
Yeah, turns out they did, which I didn't think they did at the time. But yeah, there you go.
Daniel Gafford, look, we knew there was a bit of a logjam between him, Trez, and Thomas Bryant coming back from his injury. Obviously, even Daniel Gafford with 20 minutes a game, he can still put enough numbers to be efficient. And now that he's locked in either to a bench role where he'd still be maintaining those minutes, he's still going to be worthwhile adding. So the Kristaps thing, we'll see how it happens. I think they can all play together. So I still think Daniel Gafford will play 20 minutes a game and be rosterable.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different scenarios that happen here, and I think 2 out of 3 of the scenarios are good. First scenario is that Kristaps Porzingis comes over. He's an injury-prone player. Obviously, the Wizards are tanking at this point. They've traded a few players. Beal's out for the season. They're not making the playoffs. We know that. So Kristaps Porzingis could get shut down. Daniel Gafford ends up being a top 80 player, and he's crushing it. He's playing 26 minutes a night, and he could be a top 60 player, really. Like, in all honesty, if he gets 28 minutes a night. Scenario 2 is that they play Kristaps at the 4 still, and they play Daniel Gafford at the 5. Kristaps, he did play a lot of 4 in Dallas. And in that respect, maybe Gafford plays 24, 25 minutes a night, still rosterable, still someone you should add. The third scenario is that they move Kristaps over to the center and play him more exclusively there next to like a Kyle Kuzma or something like that. And that's the scenario that Daniel Gafford might not be worth rostering in fantasy leagues. So in my mind, hedge your bets. The upside is you've got a top 60, top 70 player who's going to give you over 2 blocks a game, 8 or 9 rebounds, really good field goal percentage. The downside is that you took a swing, you miss, and you drop him later. I would definitely think that he is, again, probably of this list, one of the higher priority ads, just because of the range of outcomes and hedging your bets on what could happen. Let's talk about some watches. So we'll go through these guys a little bit quicker here. A few players that we're not ready to call ads yet. They could be, if you've got nothing on the rest of your roster and you just want to take a swing and see what happens. I thought this first guy was going to be an ad. I thought the trade was a good thing for him. I still think it can be a good thing for him. Jackson Hayes is the player I'm talking about. But it was today that CJ McCollum played his first game, and they started CJ McCollum, and they also started... who was it? Devontae Graham as well. So that pushed Jackson Hayes to the bench because then obviously Ingram was there. Who else did they have starting as well? Well, anyway, it pushed all the other guys down the roster a little bit more and meant that he came off the bench. But I think that potentially we could see Graham eventually starting to come off the bench and Hayes can come back into that starting 4 spot. So I don't mind a speculative ad, but it might require a bit of patience. Otherwise, if you're not willing to be patient right now, he can just be a watch list guy. What are your thoughts on Jackson Hayes?
I think he is just a watch list guy. One thing to note is obviously the Pelicans gave up a few more players to get CJ. Yeah. But Larry Nance Jr. did return. He is injured for now.
He's having surgery.
Now Jackson Hayes does have kind of the green light for some minutes regardless. But I would be wary of when Larry Nance does inevitably return.
They say he's going to be out for up to 6 weeks. Look, they're clearly trying to make the play-in tournament, so he might actually come back in that time. They're probably not going to shut him down completely. So but I still think there's enough time for Hayes if he's going to make a little bit of noise. But obviously, today's result in terms of him moving to the bench is not ideal. But I don't know how well the Graham, CJ McCollum starting backcourt is going to go defensively. I think that's going to be a bit of an issue, even if you do have the defensive superstar in Herb Jones there. I don't think he's going to be able to cover for all their mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. We've always said that. CJ, I like to see him play point guard. Firstly,
yeah, me too.
But then Devontae Graham, we've always said he probably could be a 6th man, and I think that's what he's destined to be.
Yeah, I think so too. And especially they got to prepare for when Zion's eventually back on this team, and he's a good fit at point guard with Zion Williamson, because you could do a bit of point Zion and point Ingram, and CJ can just sort of be that scorer and floor spacer as well. So I think that's eventually what the team's going to be, and I think that they will find that out. It's just about whether or not we can, as fantasy managers, afford to wait that long. Let's talk about another guy who I thought was going to be a really big ad. Let me down today. Isaiah Hartenstein. They've obviously traded Serge Ibaka. So that was one of the big annoying things. There was Serge, there was Zubac, and there was Hartenstein. Traded Serge Ibaka, and he got something like 6 minutes today. So huge bummer. I added him in our league, expecting a whole lot more than this, and just the off case that he was someone who can get 25 minutes a night. But I don't know. It's a bit of it kind of kills the vibe there a little bit. So he's gone from an ad to me to a watch list guy. I don't know. I think he is actually better than Zubac, but I don't know if the Clippers are ready to make that move yet. What are your thoughts on Hartenstein?
Look, I did understand where you're coming from, because Zubac is always pretty much, he's been averaging 24 minutes a game for the season, and I feel like that's what he's done previously. We know Ty Lue loves to mix up the lineup, so every game it can be a bit different, but you kind of thought that Hartenstein would lock into that, at least back up, if not maybe get some starts, and with some more consistent minutes. But this whole lineup is a bit interesting. They brought in so many people. Adam, to your watch list waited out. They got Covington as well, who potentially could close out at center when you go small ball. So that's also something to keep in mind.
They do like to go
So they
small.
have some big long guys like Batum and stuff who can Coffee. All these guys they're given minutes to. So it's a team, keep them on your watch list, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, another high per minute production sort of guy who, like some of those other guys, if he gets the minutes, he can definitely have a high ceiling, but it's just getting those minutes that's tough. Let's talk about a vet who hasn't done much this season, but we know can put up some stats. Thaddeus Young, what are your thoughts on him as someone to watch over in, where has he gone? Toronto, over in Toronto.
Yeah, those Toronto guys, they love their big 6'8" to 6'10", wings that can do it all, don't they? That's obviously, they've got a mold, and Thad Young fit that perfectly, so you better trade for him. I don't know how he's going to fit just with this team, because they have so many of the same players. Pretty much as I just touched on. He has been a good fantasy player in years past. He had a good run with Chicago last season. He's obviously been rested just for this trade deadline, and then someone finally made the move. So add him to your watch list now, because he should start to play more consistently and get minutes. Even when he was coming off the bench last season, he was still good and put up some pretty good stats. So definitely a watch list guy for me. Yeah,
I think the only thing with Toronto is they play their starters so many minutes, all of them 35 minutes plus. So do they continue to do that? And then he's getting 13 minutes. Then, probably not. But if he's getting 24, 25 minutes and they don't play as many of their centers, I'm less optimistic that it's going to be worthwhile. But if he would crack that, then he might be an ad for a steals, assists, rebounds, kind of low end kind of option. But I'm less optimistic with someone like a Thaddeus Young than some of these other guys. We did touch on Jalen Smith. We both said that he's pretty much a watch at this stage. We're not buying into the fact that I think they're going to be prioritising Goga and Isaiah Jackson over him. He hasn't really shown too much yet in his career at this stage. I honestly think he was a bit of a reach at the time that they drafted him. Let's move on to the other Wizards big man, Thomas Bryant. Now, do you agree with me that he's a watch and not an ad?
I do, and that's kind of based off what they do at Kristaps.
Yeah.
Kristaps could close out some lineups. Maybe they start the plan more at the 5. That's still yet to be determined. So for that reason, him and Thomas Bryant, I don't know how that's going to work in the front court either. No. So there's a bit of a question mark there. So add it to your watch list.
Yeah, I just think he's not as good of a fantasy player as Daniel Gafford. Like, he needs more minutes to be fantasy relevant. And if you watch the Wizards, man, he is bad. Like, he is really bad on defense. Like, I don't know,
he was always known for being bad on defense as well.
He is so bad on defense, and it's just, it's really noticeable. And obviously, he's been out for a little while with injuries, and yeah, I don't believe in Thomas Bryant, really, so I think that he would need like 28 to 30 minutes a night to be worthwhile, and I just don't see that happening. If we go back to those 3 scenarios, there's one scenario where, Kristaps gets shut down, and then they give those minutes to Bryant instead of Gafford, which I don't think that they're going to do, and that's the only scenario that I think that can happen. So hedging my bets the other way, that I don't think he's going to be the ad, but on the off chance that he is, you can watch him, because obviously Harold isn't there anymore, so he is technically a bit of a trade deadline winner. Let's talk about Zach Collins. Been out for a long time, came back the last couple of games. Obviously the Spurs, they've moved a few players, not anything major in the front court, but just clearly showing that they're going into a bit of a tank mode. So I just think that Zach Collins might be someone who has a bit of a benefit, might be maybe more of a deeper league guy, but he is interesting on a per minute basis, and has showed potential before. His minutes are ramping in the 2-game sample size that we've seen. Whether that continues and how high it goes, I'm not sure, but someone who I am interested in just keeping an eye on at this stage. What are your thoughts on Zachy Collins?
Yeah, I'm actually a bit high on Zach Collins. I think they will work him into the rotation, especially with the tank mode. I have a feeling that Popovich will get a bit of a nudge to give him minutes. And he has been a good player. Like, he has started for the Blazers previously. It's more just ramping him up, making sure he is healthy from his injury, because he's been injury plagued this whole time. So they might play it safe, but regardless, I think he can definitely be a contributor. So I'm pretty high on him for a watch list pick. Even for a dynasty league, you could even go pick him up.
Yeah, I think the dynasty stash is not the worst thing in the world. It obviously the Spurs have picked up a lot of draft picks this season, so it is tough with some of those rebuilding teams what their roster is going to look like next season. But on the off chance that he comes into the season next year as like they're starting 4 or 5, maybe Pirtle's trade. There was a few rumors around that in the trade deadline. Who knows? But he's someone that, just keeping an eye on, not adding yet, of course. We're going to fly through these last few guys. I just want to throw the names out there, and Cal, you just let me know on someone that you want to talk about. Ish Smith, Justice Winslow, Danny Avdia, CJ Ellaby, Josh Richardson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Marvin Bagley are all on our watch list at the moment. Who do you want to talk about the most?
I want to say, firstly, Ish Smith.
Yep.
He could be the starting point guard for this team.
Do you think he's worthwhile, even if he is starting?
Well, in terms of a watch list ad,
yeah.
If he starts putting up 7 assists a game, that's obviously earnable.
Yep.
He's never really been good for hitting the 3, and even his field goal's never been amazing. But if you need a stream assists, Ish Smith right now, I think, is a great ad for that very reason. One other guy I'll touch on is Marvin Bagley is the third. I believe it was the Pistons that picked him up, right?
Yeah, it was the Pistons. They traded for him.
Look, he just needed another opportunity. If you were ever, he was the number 2 pick in the draft, after all, before Luka Doncic. If you were a fan of him, maybe this is exactly what he needed, a small town, just like the Pistons, for him to maybe have an outbreak. So add him to your watch list as well. Yeah,
it's funny. Look, I didn't know that the Pistons were trying to make the playoffs, but they go and add Marvin Bagley. So clearly they're trying to win games now, aren't they? No, seriously. I think, look, you know my thoughts on Marvin Bagley. I just don't think he's a good player. I don't think he is. I think we've seen times where he's had 28, 30 minutes a night, and he's still like top one. He's just 150th ranked player. Like, sure, he might put up some points, he might grab some rebounds, but the percentages are awful. The assists are not there. There's no steals. There's no blocks. There's, no threes. The turnovers are too high for his position. Like, there's just not enough for me here. So even if he does get a huge role on this, tanking Pistons team, I'm just not excited. And look, add him to your watch list. I've had a lot of questions on Twitter about Marvin Bagley, and each time my answer is no, just don't bother. Wait until he starts.
You've obviously been burnt before. I think there's a bit of bias.
I drafted him last year in the last round, and I dropped him. I probably held on for about a month, and then I was like, no, this is just not happening.
Yeah. I will also say that some players' careers have been rejuvenated or resurrected after they've left Sacramento. So maybe that's what you're banking on.
This is true. I think that's the only hope we have here. Maybe like the Kings culture is that bad that like it's just killed his career, and all of a sudden he, Dwayne Casey is the person that brings out the best in him. I think it's a long shot, but you've got that narrative that maybe it could happen.
And I feel like that's going to make sense, right? Like, that's a classic Kings narrative.
Yeah, it is a classic Kings narrative. By the end of the season,
Marvin Bagley will be balling. There'll be all these articles about, what did the Kings do?
He really was better than Luka. He was better than Luka all this time. Yeah. I will eat my words if that's the case. But we'll see when we come to that. I want to shout out maybe two other guys. I'll shout out first Justice Winslow playing over at Portland. I think he is a sneaky ad. He's not the best fantasy player, but we know that this team is lacking a lot of talent. He's probably going to be maybe their starting power forward moving forward. He might get you some steals and assists, but he is someone that, percentages are pretty poor. The threes might not be there. The blocks, points are going to be not too great. So he does have a lot of holes to his fantasy game, but if you need some certain stats, he might be okay. And I do want to highlight Denny Avdia for the Washington Wizards. Just on the back of an interesting comment from their coach, Wes Unseld, who mentioned that they traded a few of their players in order to give room for Denny Avdia to be playing point guard, or playing more point guard, which I thought was really interesting. I don't know how well he'll succeed at that role, but hey, they're going to try some wacky things down the end of this season, and you could see some funky stats coming from Denny Avdia. Not obviously an ad just yet, and I don't even know if that's legit or not, but it would be interesting, I think. I think it would be interesting. He's a good playmaker.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, it looks like Ish Smith, maybe their starting point guard. So maybe the Denny, he'd be running some plays through through him as well. Yeah,
we'll see. Let's go through the drops here. Big one at the start here, and I think it's someone on your roster. Is that right, Cal?
It's unfortunate, but it is true. He looked like a job in the first game. He got benched, and he put up 12 minutes. So that's pretty bad.
It's not good.
As an owner, as I am, I was worried, and then obviously this happened. First game was Sabonis. So.
We obviously were hoping that after the Sabonis trade, and after we saw him play 12 minutes, that okay, well they're clearly going to trade him, right? Why have Rashawn Holmes on your bench? He's a good player. Get some value back. If that's the way you're going to go for things. But no, the Kings just they're going to keep him. Look, it sucks because he's obviously the highest drafted player on this list that we've got here, but I think he's done. I think the fun is over. Look, if it were me, I would maybe give it another game or two just to be absolutely certain that he's coming off the bench and he's going to continue doing that. But if there's a hot, if Devin Vassell or even an Andre Drummond is out there, I would make that swap. I would do that swap. If there's not much out there, then you can afford to wait a game or two. But the writing is kind of on the wall. Would you agree with that assessment? Are you going to wait a game or two, or are you pretty quick to make a move, Cal?
Yeah, I'm going to wait a game or two. That's my strategy. And look, maybe things could change. And I'm looking at he's 90% rusted.
Yeah,
that's obviously he was preseason 35.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a hit for a lot of people. I ended up getting a bit of a steal in the draft, but if I have to drop him now, it's a disappointment.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a shame because I think he's a good player, man. But anyway, you got to do what you got to do, and I think he is not going to be valuable if he's playing 18 minutes off the bench. So let's go on to the next couple of guys that we might have been stashing in a wake of the trade deadline. Kelly Olynyk, is someone who was on that list. Obviously, didn't get traded. Jeremy Grant didn't get traded. And he is just struggling to get the minutes, so I think that you can move on from him. He's a bit frustrating to own. So I think that, you can move on from Kelly Olynyk. You have my tick of approval. It probably was worth the wait, worth the risk, because, we know what he did at the end of last season on a shit team. He might have done it again this year, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Kelly Olynyk. They got Jalen Smith, I think, as well. Was that a different team?
Oh no, that was
Indiana.
Indiana got him. So they didn't they added Marvin Bagley, of course.
Marvin Bagley, that's right.
The big Sacramento Kings. So
and they'll go the youth movement. So unfortunately, I was kind of down on Kelly a few weeks ago, and I said you probably should have dropped him. Here we are again. I think it's confirmed.
I had him on my roster up until this morning, and now I've already dropped him. I made the drop to add Hartenstein, and I'll probably move on from him as well. But I think that for that position is just going to become a streaming spot for me because, I think you can get better value. Let's talk about the couple of losers over in Brooklyn in LaMarcus Aldridge and Nicholas Claxton. Obviously, with Andre Drummond coming to the team, there's just a logjam at center there. These two both can't stay healthy. I think that both of them, whilst you might see patches of value throughout the season, consistently, I don't know if they're going to be worthwhile living through those headaches. And I think you can probably do better either streaming the position or getting one of these guys that we've had in our ads earlier in the video. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I got Drummond. I think he'll slide in, and they're probably just going to try and get LaMarcus healthy for the playoffs and just rest him a lot. So he'll be very annoying to own. I would drop him.
Yeah.
Claxton, just can't stay healthy. He still can be reasonable in minutes, so he could be a streamer for blocks, but that's about it, I think.
Yeah, persistent injuries and things like that, and obviously, I don't know. Like they're going to have to win some games soon here, Brooklyn. They're currently in the bloody play-in tournament, which is crazy to think about, but. Yeah, I don't know. It's just his body's letting him down, and just the logjam is it's not good. Here's our favorite guy that we like to shit on, Chris Boucher. He's been in a few of our drop videos or sell high videos. Please, if you can sell high, do it now, because I think that the addition of Thaddeus Young is going to hurt Boucher as sort of like that small ball center. I think that he's going to eat into Boucher's. I don't think he's an immediate drop. Like some of these other guys, because just wait and see how it works out. But sort of like Rashawn Holmes after one or two games when who did I say? Thaddeus Young's in the lineup. I think that I'm predicting that he's going to drop below sort of 18 minutes a game, and then it's just not going to be enough to be worthwhile.
Yep. I think Thad Young is going straight into that lineup, and I will say Chris Boucher is a drop in.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. I've never been high on him. And now it's confirmed.
Yeah. I think let's go on to another logjam. Again, at center spot, all these players are losers here. Mason Plumlee, PJ Washington, Montrezl Harrell, all on the same team. PJ Washington didn't get traded. Montrezl got traded to a team that also already has a few same level kind of players. So I think they're all just going to be kind of splitting minutes. Mason Plumlee was doing all right as the starting center there, but I think, with Harrell coming into the mix, that his upside is not high enough that if he starts to drop off, then you just move on from a player like that. Of all of these players, like which one's the worst? What do you think in terms of the priority and dropping? Is a funny way to say, but like if you were to rank these players, how would you rank them rest of the season?
Like all of them in general.
Mason Plumlee, PJ, and
okay.
Harrell, just the Hornets guys.
Look, I would say Harrell, I think I've got the most faith in. I think he can roll with them. Mason Plumlee, I see his minutes going down. I see Trez still being per minute beast at about 20 minutes a game. PJ, I'm not too sure about. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Big question mark. Mason Plumlee, I'd be out. I'd be dropping him just because his reduction in minutes. And his other stats really haven't been that good this year, honestly. Like his points are so down. His free throw percentage hurts you so much for what he's given you. It's probably not completely worth it.
Yeah.
And I do think Trez will definitely hurt what he's been putting up already.
Yeah, I think they're all going to lose out. It's strangely enough, I still have the most confidence in Plumlee getting the most amount of minutes, but I think that because of the way he is, like he needs the most amount of minutes of all of them to get the best stats, so it's just a lose all around. So I would be happy dropping all of them. This one here, I don't think he's a drop just yet, but I'm just like getting ready to drop him almost in anticipation. Devontae Graham. I mentioned before that obviously CJ McCollum's come into the roster. Obviously, he's honestly been a pretty bad fantasy player for most of the season, barely clinging on to standard league value. Obviously, he has the assists, which are worth something, but terrible field goal percentage. Is he someone that you are happy to drop if there's like a good waiver wire acquisition out there?
I'd probably still hold on to him for the time being and see how it plays out, because maybe it will be a slow progression to moving him to the bench. I don't know how that will turn out. But even when he's playing, he still shoots a lot of threes, even he plays with CJ. So I would wait it out for him, but he definitely does look like a bit of a loser.
Yeah, look, he played all right today. Obviously, 31 minutes, he put up 16 points, 3 steals, which you don't usually see from him. But I can just, like I said, I'm worried about that backcourt and the success that it's going to have. And I think that you're going to find that they're going to give up too much defensively to keep playing that backcourt. And the last couple of drops, Spencer Dinwiddie, who was never really a good fantasy player. He's going on to a team with Luka Doncic, who's going to have the ball in his hands the entire time. On the season, he's actually the 183rd ranked player, so I don't know why he's in 74% of rosters. He's just someone whose percentages, particularly his field goals, are terrible, gives you no steals, no blocks. The assists, I guess, are good, but they're going to drop way off now that he's on the Dallas Mavericks.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. He's one of those guys who he puts up a bit of points, and I guess that's why people do draft him. But yeah, percentages never been great. He's actually been shooting really badly this season.
Yeah, really bad.
And I think him and Luka will be reasonable together in terms of maybe his efficiency will go up.
Yeah.
That being said, his assists should drop down.
Yeah.
And the net positive, it's just going to be worse overall.
It'll go up to what, 41%? You know, like it's not gonna be good. Like it's still gonna be bad, and it's still gonna hurt you, and it's not enough to offset the drop in the assists. So, and he's already the 183rd ranked player. So rostered in 74% of leagues, you can drop Spencer Dinwiddie, in my opinion, fairly comfortably. And the last guy, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, going from the New Orleans Pelicans over to the... where did he actually end up? Was it the Clippers?
Ended up in Utah.
Oh, Utah, that's right, yeah. So Utah, he's going to be, alongside Jordan Clarkson in that 6th, 7th man role, in my opinion. So I think that drop in usage, drop in playing time. He's also already not the best fantasy player, so feel free to move on from him. Are you in agreement there?
Yep, 100%. Get rid of Alexander Walker. Sad to say, but now it's going to be more of a bench role and won't be worth on a fantasy team.
Yeah, he's rostered in 49% of leagues, and that should be closer to like 5% of leagues because he's the 231st ranked player on the season already in 26 minutes. So you can drop that man. That will do it for today, guys, on this podcast. Soon we will be having another podcast talking about winners and losers coming out as well, talking about more of the players that are already on your rosters that you're not going to drop or add or anything like that, but just in case you want to make adjustments based around where we think the value is going to change in the league. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe over on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast. Make sure you give us a comment down below. Let us know what you think about the trades on YouTube, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.